Good morning. And we were promised, yeah. Well, we were promised they weren't going to do that. Our city council members, they sold us the extension, 24-year extension of the sales tax and increase of the sales tax. They sold us that saying that, well, I got to have one or the other. You either, I have to raise your taxes over here, see, or else I'm going to have to raise your property taxes. And I said to Sean Palmer and the rest of them, I said, you're going to do that anyway. You're going to come back. You're not going to say no to a tax increase. This new one, though, what's that percent? 10? 10.2. Well, once you get beyond 10, I guess the point two is just frosting on the cake. Oh, yeah. Nothing. These experimental electric buses, the green bike franchise that we pay for. I mean, all of these little, like, we got to have art installations, a million point two for an umbrella that people can stand under. Yeah, and then all the just straight up thievery, and the Democrats are going to just say, well, everybody's going to acquiesce to say, we need to fully fund everything. See, we need to fully fund this. And they're fully funding the fraud and the fraudsters, and there's never any prosecution of that stuff. They're wasting. Yeah. And with the performance, like if you've got 10, they came out with 10% lower graduation rates in the African American community. What money's not going to be the sole fix on that. They got to, there's a whole lot of other things going on, and all the performance areas, all the kids are performing lower in all the performance areas. So why reward that failure? Besides, the Rochester Public School District has been hemorrhaging kids to the tune of 1,000 per year are walking away from the Rochester Public Schools. They sold off buildings and then they built a new building. So is it, what do they need the money for? I mean, I've seen places where the local people in the village have like a little piece of slate and some chalk. And that's the education the kids gather, and that's what they've got. We got to reach a point where we say to people, more money is not the solution. What about those broken iPads that the Rochester Public School just threw away or tried to get repaired? And then they sued the company that sold them the iPads that weren't working. And then the big, anyway, we could go on and on. Yeah, they always need more money, and some of the plans include like in Rochester, okay, like you mentioned, Palmer. So he graduated from Lourdes High School, but he seemed to be fine with destroying the old building, selling it to Neal, letting it fall into disrepair. And the public said, no, we want to save Lourdes High School. The public came to the microphone and said, we want to save that. Nope, they got to get rid of Lourdes High School. And Norton doesn't care. She's from Nebraska or whatever. And then the Silver Lake Dam. We said we want to keep the Silver Lake Dam. It's doing its job. Just maintain it. It's cheaper to maintain it than swap it out. But no, they gotta turn the lakes into a river and create a Muslim prayer space down there where, this dam has been functioning since the big flood of 1978. And the people of this community spoke out and said, we want to save it. We want to keep it. Well, they got money for universal basic income now, House File 2666, and Andy Smith is all about basic, universal basic income. It doesn't work in California.
No.
The people in California are running away to come to Minnesota.
That's what's crazy to me, is because like a lot of people don't realize like California's in the news big time right now. They just had the last days of legislative session, and I've been watching that closely. You had a lot of celebrities out there. You had Tariq Nasheed, you had some of the BLM, and what I'm saying, Black Lives Matter, and they were asking for reparations. But why would we pay reparations, right? Here's my thing of it is, you're asking for a state that wasn't even involved in slavery to be a part of it, to pay their taxpayers to pay for something they had no clue in what was going on. So my thing of it is, I honestly feel like even in Minnesota, we have a bill right now for reparations, $100 million fund for reparations.
Right.
I'm not for it. And CMH, Bobby Joe Champion, the DFL, I've literally stated to these people why I'm not okay with it, because when you can self-identify as being Black, it takes away from my struggle. It takes away from my family's history, their culture, because we don't want to share with everybody. This month, today's September 2nd, it's Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a lot of events going on. You'll see Rochester, you'll see Red Wing, but then I want people to remember, you don't see the same kind of thing for Juneteenth or let's say February, which is the shortest month of the year in Black History Month. But what is Black?
Right. Well, what is Black? I mean, it's something that a lot of people aspire to be now.
Right.
It's the part of themselves that they identify with. If I had learned to make more of my Native American ancestry, if I had learned to lift that side of my family up, like as if there was going to be some benefit in identifying as such, well, I guess I'd be ahead. But this racial demographic politics is absurd. If you look at little countries like Bolivia or Uruguay, I mean Paraguay, where they have all the 40 different ethnic groups, they're all competing for resources, and if a group doesn't get their way, they'll chop down a tree and stop the highway system or the train system. So it's like, well, if we start going down that road, by the way, we're already divided into like camps. It's almost like they're bringing back an apartheid structure for ghettoizing everybody. If you create school systems that are exclusively like, the K through 12 Somali school system, if you have like everybody segregated by race or religion or some other ethnic group or nationality group, which would be Somali, but also Islamic, but also Black, right, or East African.
They have tribes too.
You're bringing in tribalism to North America. You're creating tribalism. So, and do the new arrivals from Africa deserve reparations too? The way they're out there at the George Floyd riots. I mean, when I saw a Somali kid kicking a police car here in Rochester, and the police car backs up and lets him have the right of way, all of a sudden there's new allies in the BLM movement from East Africa. I mean, who knew? They were they always part of the systemic racism in this place? I getting back to taxes though a little bit. When after we all called for the Silver Lake Dam to be saved, it didn't, or just leave it alone, don't fix it, it ain't broke, right? Our
Right.
ancestors used to say that, and they also used to say use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. But then they come out with House File 3462, and Andy Smith goes for the Silver Lake Park Dam Destroyer bill just to break up the dam. I mean, why do that? I mean, also, when there was a chance to do away with Social Security taxes and say to the seniors, you already paid your Social Security tax,
Right.
there was a poll that said most people would have been fine with senior citizens keeping more of their own money. But no, he refused to. He spoke in the Minnesota State Legislature to. He spoke against allowing seniors to not be taxed on their Social Security income. I have video of him saying that it was a way of what how did he put it? He said, we're going to miss our revenue
Revenue.
opportunity way into the future. He sees Social Security income as a revenue opportunity. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't understand business. But anyway, I didn't want to make a campaign speech. Let's go back to taxes.
Oh, you
If you
good? Because I
the
wondered the same thing too. Because when I was going through my resolution process in Red Wing, Minnesota, I became accustomed to truth and taxation, and I didn't understand what like city budgets, and so I got to learn more about our taxes. And people really should be concerned, is because a lot of corporations, let's say like Red Wing, Excel was paying 59 or 51 more than, let's say, than what the community was paying for taxes back to the city. But that's not the case anymore, because it's literally going to the homeowners and less on the corporations who bring in millions and billions, all while they're comfortable. Because Xcel Energy, the biggest corporation in Red Wing, Minnesota, besides Red Wing Shoe, only pays 51% tax. Now, you have the rest of, I dig into all of this, man, because I was like, I couldn't realize of why, our taxes go fluctuate during the years and have gotten higher, but yet Excel or like Red Wing Shoe or like Mayo Clinic can pull their big boy shorts on and not pay anything. And I always wondered why. So there's a lot of things that we as people do not understand, and we should become more informed, because there's a lot of things that I've learned in the last 4 years that I didn't know from school or growing up. You know what I'm saying? That people weren't telling us.
Yeah, you got me thinking about so many things right now, because there's kids in school that are saying, could I please learn how to do my taxes? No, day
Right.
to day. Or could I please learn how to balance my checkbook? I said okay. It's like, no, could you use the same bathroom, boys and girls? Just want to learn how to do some simple basic life skills math? No, we're not going to teach you that. We're
Right.
going to give you all the correct political attitudes. And then you mentioned Mayo Clinic. They are a nonprofit. I mean, they're
Right.
one of the, it's kind of like, I would like to see some Ron DeSantis energy in what he did to Disney in
Disney.
Florida.
Right. They're not.
Brought let's revisit this deal that Mayo Clinic has, not just with Rochester, but with the state of Minnesota,
Right.
where DMC collects money from all these other entities, all these other municipalities, all these other people are paying into DMC, and we're spending $17 million on some Mother Earth Gaia worship pavers in downtown Rochester that people are tripping on and breaking their faces. And we're doing settlements and payouts to people who got injured, and the handicapped people can't walk through there.
Right.
It's like you broke it. We had a beautiful Peace Park. You remember Peace Park? How green it was? It was a green space,
Max
brother.
Restaurant.
It was green. There were restaurants. Children used to play in the fountain there.
The
I
whole,
mean,
what's
we took,
crazy is because we always, when I was younger, when we first moved to Rochester, we always used to hang downtown at the Galleria. It was called the Galleria Mall. Not Discovery Space, One Discovery, whatever the hell they call it now. It was called the Galleria Mall. There was a movie theater up
yeah,
top. There was an arcade. Cheap Charlie's was on the third floor. You had a pizza joint. You had, I believe there was a McDonald's, even a McDonald's up there.
Yep.
So there was
There was a
different
shop dedicated to puzzles, and there was a suit place where you could buy really nice clothes
games
and
by James,
yeah.
right? And it's
People
totally
used to go
changed.
there.
I did too. I grew up there, especially
Yeah.
my late years before adulthood. That's where I hung out. You know what I'm saying? Of like
Yeah.
where I got to know what was the ins and outs of Rochester, and I'll just tell you like this: I do not see the same Rochester that we moved to as I do now.
Yeah,
So
they broke it. Yeah.
it definitely broke it, and that's the main thing that I want people to see is that Rochester is only going to get worse. It's not going to. It's only going to get better is if people wake up and pay attention to what's going on because they're far ahead. They're far ahead of us when it comes to DMC. This is something that's been talked about for over 20 years.
The taxation is outrageous. The taxes always go up. And
Right.
sometimes I'm by myself sitting there in these truth and taxation meetings. I'm like the only non-government employee who
Boy.
bothered to show up, and I've got my cell phone and I'm filming it because that's the only way anybody's going to find out what was said. And they just like you say, look, could we just audit this amount of money that you got? You guys are talking about buckets of money. You got a bucket of money over there, a bucket over there. I said, could we be more specific? Could we do with granularity? Could we talk about how much money you spent on diversity, inclusion, and equity? Could we talk about those contracts with outside agencies? Could we talk about, okay, they bring in a firm that comes in to do the same audit that they do everywhere, and they always find racism. They
Right.
always find that there's a problem, and the problems with the teachers, and the problems with the administrators. The problem is frankly with the white kids,
Right.
or the Asians that are white adjacent. It's the same survey, and this company will just get a bucket of money and conduct a survey. It's the same results they have all over the country. And I was sitting there when they were doing their results one night, and their slideshow actually included, they mentioned in the slideshow the Inuit population.
Yep.
And then at the bottom of the PowerPoint, it said no Inuit Alaskans no Inuits were interviewed in the process of this conducting this survey of Rochester students.
Yep.
And I was like, is anybody else catching what's going on here? And the presenters actually apologized, saying that they didn't have time to edit their not Excel, but their PowerPoint presentation. They didn't have time. And I imagine them on the plane from Alaska going, well, we're done in Alaska. Now we need to give a survey in Rochester.
Right.
Or they email the same results from Alaska or whatever. It's like, it's good you didn't include any Inuits, because you know what? There really aren't any Inuits around here. That's an Alaskan Native American. They're up there in Canada, like way above Winnipeg mostly. But Algonquins, no, there aren't any Algonquins around here. No, they're in Canada over to Connecticut and Long Island and New Hampshire and Vermont. That it may be into Maine a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad they didn't include any Inuits. But our tax money is paying to just find racism, and that
Right.
company needs to be fully examined. I asked Dr. Peckel on the school board, what are the companies, the outside agencies that you contract with? Who's getting money? Like, just list the outside agencies that you contract with. No response.
Because there's never no transparency.
Right.
They always want to hide what they're doing, and that's the one thing that I want people to know is because the election before you're you're running against Andy, but when he was running in his last election, we had a 17.9 reserve. You know what I'm saying? That were in taxes. Now, why do we have maybe a deficit? The forecast says we have a deficit now. That may change. We're a couple of months away before the final figures come out. But that's weird to me of like, why isn't nobody asking where that 17.9 billion, not million, billion went?
We're supposed to give it back to us, and we were told we'd get that surplus back, and then instead of giving it back, they spent it down.
Right.
And then not only did they spend it down, they created a lot of new taxes. So tax increases that Andy Smith voted for include 3.7 billion in new transportation taxes. And that you're getting that in the metro area to the tune of like
Right.
0.75. Sales tax increase. They increased our sales, as we said, they increased our sales taxes as well. And they said that was going to pay for certain things, and already they're spending it on other things.
Other
But
things.
the metro tax increases, and then there's a 36% increase in the vehicle registration taxes in Minnesota generally too. So you get the tax tab fee increases. Fees are taxes also, right? And what do you get for that? You know,
Not
there's a lot
much.
of cars on the road that don't have any license plates at all. There's a lot of cars on the road that have expired tags. There's a lot of people that come here from Wisconsin, Texas, Chicago, and they never change their plates. They live all around Rochester. They drive their old state's plates. Who's ever going to follow up on that? If you're driving on our roads here, by the way, why don't those green bugs pay taxes? And when do they ever get any fines? I've been in those meetings with people from San Francisco where they televise in, and we're in a conference room in Rochester, and it's a televised meeting with people in San Francisco that run the franchise
Yep.
throughout American U.S. cities. It's the name of the company. I just call them Green Bugs. But we asked them, how many fines have you assessed since we last met? Because we said, we expect the fines to go up because the kids are using the green bugs incorrectly, or they're parked in the middle of the street and stuff. And then they just kind of get quiet. Well, I said, well, who's going to get that money anyway if you do assess a fee?
Right.
But remember the 50-cent delivery order?
Ordinance, right? They
50
bumped
cent,
that up during
like,
COVID.
I like calling that up, but you got to pay 50 cents extra to have something delivered. And then we got a vehicle sales tax that increased. So if you buy a new vehicle, it's the 5th largest increase in sales tax on new vehicles
Right.
in the United States. And Andy Smith voted for all of that. So I remember hearing Kim Hicks call him a tax expert. He's a tax expert because he sits on the finance. Only Democrats will fall upstairs like Joseph Piss Pants Potato Head Biden. You fall upstairs.
Right.
And Andy Smith got promoted. He goes bankrupt, right?
Yep.
And then he gets promoted up to be sitting on the state finance policy board in your Minnesota state legislature. So he goes bankrupt, and he's going to do for Minnesota what he did to his business in Rochester. Sorry, I'm not digging on poor people, but the dude's not poor. I don't know how they did $100,000 build out for the guy when, have you ever had somebody do favors for you like that?
Not like that.
I
got
got a lot of business ideas. Give me a grant, man.
Right.
I have a lot of business. If you give me $100,000 to play with, or you want to sign a long-term lease with me, I think I could wager I have way more money in the bank than Andy Smith did when credit was extended to him by all these different organizations, including Walt Disney. Walt Disney extends credit to little Andy Smith. Why? What's Walt Disney's interest in Rochester?
Mayo Clinic, because I literally, when Mayo Clinic pulled its weight, and there was a bill at the state legislature about nurses to bed, and the reason why it was dropped was because of Mayo Clinic.
I'll call you back. I'm on a live stream.
Sorry, man.
No,
you're good. No, pulled its weight, and that bill was dropped. And it wasn't dropped what they were dropped from that bill. And I was like, why is Mayo left out, but all the other hospitals have to abide by these rules? And I never understood it. But then when that $5 billion, we'll just move DMC out of Rochester. Well, then.
Oh, please.
Right. And I see that's what it all comes down to. It doesn't come down to the quality of our communities. It comes down to what's the quality of their bank accounts. Because does
They,
$5 billion matter, or does the growth of our communities matter? That's the one
oh,
thing where I really, really, really I ponder, because when I look at the DMC's plans, which breaks ground in this fall, at Osmond Hall or whatever it's called, I'm really concerned, because I don't see the same Rochester that I grew up with. I'm seeing a new, improved, that is not, it's basically a 15-minute city. It's the same thing that they're doing in Minneapolis and St. Paul, because everybody's asking why crime is getting out of hand. Well, let's look at it. Why crime is getting out of hand? Because they're raising costs in other places where people can't afford. So where do they move? To places they can. You know what I'm saying? It's like, me and my wife are looking for an apartment right now, right? And in this area in Grand Meadow, Spring Valley, you could pay around anywhere 800 to 1,000 for a 2-bedroom, right? But you go down to Rochester, and it's been all 13, 14, 15, 16. So it really depends on the cost of living in that area. And the cost of living down here is less. And is that good? Because I still know people that work at our general store that make only $12.50 an hour, but yeah, you can go to bigger cities and make more money.
you got me thinking about 3 different things while you're talking, because you're making too much sense. Please stop making sense. You, I mean, one of the things is that I dished a little bit of poop in the direction of Sean Palmer, but
Yeah.
he needs to be reminded that he's got to answer to his people. Frankly, but the alternative to Sean Palmer is this Randy Schubring cat
Oh,
who
Randy.
totally totally a DFL plant in Rochester. He's a Mayo Clinic, and you touched on Mayo. He's a Mayo Clinic paid employee to shill for Mayo Clinic. He's a spokesperson. He's a lobbyist. He works for Mayo Clinic, and
Right.
he knows how to pitch Mayo's deal. And then he says, "Oh, but don't worry, I'm gonna resign if I get elected." Not satisfied. That seems like, remember when the Pentagon used to have like revolving door people working in government, and then they
Right.
would for the Pentagon, and then you become a lobbyist, and then you run for office. And we need to shut that revolving door, stop that musical chairs junk. But the DFL connection is strong with Randy. He ran in St. Paul as a Democrat and
Right.
lost up there, and then he was on Mark Dayton's airport commission,
Yeah.
and after that, then he was re-upped for the airport commission by Tim Walz. But then, that's one thing. Randy Schubring's a disaster, so I'm absolutely supporting Sean Palmer. But Mayo helps the city of Rochester write their bonding bills, and what we've never learned who's helping from Mayo to write the city's bonding issues, because then DMC is involved, because Mayor Norton sits on the DMC board, which incidentally endorsed her in her last bid to run for. I mean, she sits on the board and they endorsed her. Surprise. This is a Democrat coal town. It's like a
Isn't
coal mine.
Noser running against Norton?
Not that I know
Not
of,
that you
no.
know. I thought
We were
Brett
so
Noser was running.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then anyway, Mayo could have started over anywhere. Why
Right.
why come to a beautiful town and then just like buy up all your competitors, buy up Methodist, buy up St. Mary's? You don't we want diversity? I mean, there should be options, right? Why buy up all the hospitals in the region and then start closing them down?
Now,
Damn.
right.
That's how does that help people's health?
It's not helping it.
No. And that's when you make money, is when people are sick.
That's the
Oops.
crazy part, is it's a monopoly. You know what I'm saying? It's like in Rochester, we either have OMC or we have Mayo Clinic, where OMC, they have very good services, but there's some things they don't do. And then they send you over to Mayo, which has an abundance of patients, and then it takes forever to be able to get the care and the services that you need. And I realize is that whoever, it's monopoly. It's, oh, we can get more money here, we can get more money there, and I'm like, I do have feelings. I am a person, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do want a conclusion into why I'm having these issues. I don't want to be, pass the buck to somebody else so they can point a blame game. No, I want facts, and I feel like that's what we get when it comes to government, or even with our taxes. Why are we having the most? We're having the most crisis in our communities, but we're being the most taxed. I will never understand it, and we get less public services from our police departments, from our fire department. You know what I'm saying? That they're there's car thefts, but they're not blaming the carjackers. They're blaming the cars.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
yeah. Why even bother? Why should the police even bother arresting nobody after they get booked and the cop does the rest of the day doing paperwork? They get released and they never get prosecuted anyway. So it's kind of this game, and the police need to be on the street and be on good terms with the bad guy, more importantly than the taxpayers. The taxpayer, you drive to work every day and you go, what am I paying for? You see all this nonsense going on. Well, it demotivates people. And isn't that part of Agenda 21, 2030? It's the 15-minute cities. In the future, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. You got to get used to just having your wealth transfer. And they're not shy about wealth transfer. It's demotivating for people, I mean, all the stuff that they're passing now. By the way, they want to save money on, we talked about Medicare and Medicaid fraud in the last time we talked a little bit. And they're doing all that all over again. But
it's
the House File 1930. You complain about health care. I complain about health care, but there's a solution. Andy Smith and the DFL. House File 1930. I call it the kill pill death bill, where in the future, grandma's going to get a pill instead of a procedure. Grandpa's going to get a talking to instead of having health care. Well, they're going to call it health care because this is House File 1930. It's euthanasia is what it is. And it's selective. It's a rationing of health care so that if people meet certain criteria, they get a talking to. You get a little counseling. I mean, this is Soylent Green science fiction coming into play now. Soylent Green levels of energy, where you're just going to say it costs too much. Everything right now they're calling it a right to die. You should have the right to die, but it's going to be a slippery slope from the right to die to the duty to die, right? Just they start with something you can't argue with. Oh, people want to have the right to die, but it ends up being, well, you've had a good life, and don't you want your money to go to your kids? And you want to use up all your money trying to get healthy again, and do you really want to have this operation? Because it's going to cost $100,000 and da-da-da-da-da. So why not just, it's going to be a peaceful death. It'll be a peaceful death. They'll give you little, you can take your tablet. Maybe they'll give you a DVD to watch so you can relax and chill out and have some, nature sounds, just like in Soylent Green. Young people need to watch Soylent Green if they ever think they're not going to get old. If they're smart and lucky, they will get old. But right now, they shouldn't resent us. They should be listening to us. But, hey, young people are young people. Would I have listened to when I was their age? Probably not. But taxes are just getting worse. How about the nonprofits? So they devastated a critical resource, and I don't like pull tabs, but some people like pull tabs. But they took away like a revenue source for local charities in changing the electronic pull tab laws. So less of the money goes to the local charities. That was
bogus.
Yeah. But what are you going to do? Oh, how about voting against eliminating the corporate tax disclosure provision? So you used to be able to see more disclosure information about corporate taxes, but it eliminates confidentiality. It puts you at a competitive disadvantage with other businesses. So Minnesota businesses have to show all of this, basically secret information that should be corporate, because if you're running a business or corporation, some of your transactions need to be private.
Right.
Otherwise, your competitors will have an advantage in being able to study your business model
Yep.
and squeak in behind your back and maybe offer, your competitive services. It's happening right now with contractors in Minnesota.
Yep.
That's why you get these contractors that aren't from here doing all the roofing work and the gutter work and the downspout work, or they'll subcontract. There's another way, like, I'm sorry, I'll try to shut up. Right,
No,
one more
good.
point. The way that they import foreign workers, even on guest visas, is sort of questionable.
Right.
Because you want American kids to have those summer jobs of working on roofs and, we're going to get this team from Texas to come up. And, it's always going to be, you're not really sure if they're legally here or not.
Right. If they have a degree, if they have their license, if they have, the paperwork and all, it's a struggle. I just seen that this summer Grand Meadow, that we had them big storms this spring, and most of the roofers up here were Mexican crews. They could barely speak English.
Yeah.
So
and some of them didn't speak any, and my Spanish is really good. Some of them didn't speak any English at all, and they're doing all the contracts. What happens when they get injured? Where do they go? Where do they just ship them back? Just and you saw on the front of Star and Tribune several times they've done stories about whole buildings of Mexican employees that were brought here to do some kind of work in Minnesota. Company goes out of business, and then they're stuck with their visa status up in the air. What are they going to do? Well, you got to go, or they get farmed out to somebody else. So they're living under slave conditions here in Minnesota. You'd think the DFL would care about that, but
right.
Well,
no, I was just over here going over all the bills that they passed this session, and 24, and there was a lot because especially to do with taxes and all the nonprofits and try to better our community, but nothing ever was bettered. And I don't see homelessness. I see people getting smarter about homelessness in Rochester. They're starting to put up hammocks instead of tents, and that's one thing I do feel like is how do we solve that? Because we've given so much money to homelessness, but yet we're seeing people homeless. So it's where do we as individuals get involved? Or even, I see that's another major reason of, people have their own reasons of why they got involved in politics. Yours is taxes. Yours is because you care about the people and you're tired of being screwed over and not listened to. And some people may not agree with you. They may agree with your message. They don't like the messenger. We have to get away from that.
I keep knocking my head. All they say is West London, his antics. It's I had to say to the Post Bulletin, did you listen to the speech? He was talking about my antics in one speech. I said, you looked at a picture and you're calling it antics. Did you listen to that speech? Do you know what I was talking about during that speech? I talked about Rochester being a cultural crossroads, how people came together here because of agriculture, and it grew from dairy and grain, and this is where the train station was. It was a crossroads. That's why we got Crossroads Mall. That's why the county fair is held there.
Why did Ampy close?
Made sense to have the county seat be at the crossroads. It was all planned that way. But what do we got now? We got cultures fighting with each other for no reason. You got a bunch of people jumping this Asian girl got beat up in the rock. She was bullied for 5 or 6 years by this same group of people. They were hassling her. They finally caught up with her at the county fair and they beat the shit out of her there. And then it's whoa, the teachers knew, the principal knew, the superintendent's office knew. And I said to the Post Bulletin, you didn't listen to the speech?
Right.
You damn doing antics in there? You guys didn't even
they're paid to. I always felt like they're paid to pay attention to what they want to pay to, because there's so much things going on in Rochester and it doesn't fit their narrative. There's people that male employees have killed. We don't see that in the news. We don't see that in the paper. There's just like with the homeless lady that I won't call her homeless, but the lady that was arrested for homicide, she admitted to it. She did something wrong, and they still didn't want to believe her. It took weeks for them to, what I'm saying? It's like you have people coming out and telling you that, instead of being called a conspiracy theorist, that things are really going on in the community, and they're looked down upon. Because I believe that if we believe them, we wouldn't have the problems that we do. Instead of just sweeping it under the rug, we would actually face it instead of running from them. And that's what I feel like we're doing, is running instead of facing them head on.
Yeah, it says there's a strange thing about the Post Bulletin being like a stenographer for power, but that article, it was strangely fair in some ways, like he was explaining what I was doing, but
Right.
I'm in a really weird place. Like I do kind of wish I could go back 9 months and not decide to run for office, because this is the weirdest. You're in a stupid fishbowl, and every people calling you up, and I got no favors to dispense, and I
Right.
don't have any money.
Right.
It's like I'm not a rich
Just a
guy.
regular,
I
degular,
can't,
ordinary
I
ass
can't do
dude.
anything really to help people, and
Right.
and the establishment is used to picking the people who run. The establishment chooses it's the uni party in Rochester.
Right.
It's the nonpartisan people that get to choose. And you talk about all these nonprofits that influence, like Isaiah, Minnesota. I mean, they got millions of dollars to send volunteers out to walk for the DFL, and they're a nonprofit. Well, they started a 501c4 because I kept talking about their 501c3 at city council.
Right. That's the
school
one thing that bothers me, is because, okay, so how do you ask for accountability when there's loopholes where you point something out, they've done something wrong, right? That is maybe not criminally, but ethically, they have done it wrong. And then all of a sudden there's a loophole in this system that they're allowed to change that bad behavior, and there's no consequence for it. To me, I don't believe that's right. I don't believe that's fair, because we've all had to come through a system, or let's say a struggle. And when I robbed somewhere, I didn't get, oh, my bad. I didn't get the money back and be like, you know what? Let's just forget this ever happened. No, I had to face consequences, and then we moved forward. No, you know what I'm saying? We uncover something, and I'll say, because of Bill Glenn, Alpha News, they're not listened to, all because of their politics. People should listen to the American experiment, because if they did, they would you wouldn't be baffled as so much as you are now. You would be wondering why we have furries running for city council, when it's more about popularity than it is about our policies. And I've said that even where I live, there's a guy here who's got signs up everywhere all over town. He's the only one with signs up, right? I've seen a few Trump, I've seen a few Royce, but he's the only one literally that has signs for him, that for this area, that he's running for, city council. But people don't like him because he thinks he's an asshole. Well, do you want the corruption that keeps on going on we're not getting no accountability, right? Or do you want somebody that's an asshole and you're going to get accountability? Because we've been talking about the wind turbines for 2 years. 2 years. But because these people kiss everybody's ass, we don't get no accountability. Or do you want an asshole and we get accountability?
Yeah.
Clearly, people got to think about that. That's the one thing that I see is wrong with our world, our society, is that we're okay with the lesser of two evils than actually facing that evil head on.
When I look at these non-serious politicians that are all about feel good, and oh my God, I got a swastika on my house projected by KIMT on the side of my house that wasn't there really. And oh, I'm such a nice person. It's like, I think like sometimes conservatives are nice people pretending to be badass, and then liberals are bad people kind of pretending to be nice. And it's a real switcheroony. I remember when the DFL was the party of peace, and they didn't want to have wars overseas, and they were
anti-war. It used to be the Republicans that were always at war. If you look through our history, they talk about a big switch. Please point me in the direction, because I believe that the switch was, let's see how much bullshit we can get accomplished and how much America won't notice.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
And they usually work like fist and glove. Like the DFL now is like the velvet glove inside the GOP fist. And I don't completely trust the GOP people that I know and
Right.
work with. I really don't understand their compelling why. You always want to ask, why is somebody involved in politics? I'd like to see the working people and the poor people of Rochester keep more of their own damn money,
Right.
in their pocket, because I can't afford this compassion that the Democrats and Republicans both have planned for me. I mean, how did the Republican platform ended up including a plank at our county level? And nobody that I know had suggested this be a plank.
Right.
But what job training for new arrivals in Minnesota? It's like, wait a minute. I work with I work with kids that are spending like 35% of their monthly income to rent a 400 square foot studio in Rochester.
Right.
And you expect that girl to fund somebody else's? She's ready to be trained. She's a 24-year-old and she's ready to be trained to enter the workforce in some other way. But why are you going to take her income and tax her to pay for corporate America to train newcomers that are coming to the United States? And then they put that in the GOP platform. Well, that's worker replacement. That's
Right.
population replacement right there. And you're asking that girl, she can't afford to go out on a date. She's got a drink at home. I hear about her situation all the time. And it's like young people should be permitted. The people here now are the natives,
Right.
okay? That's
Then I'm like, right.
Minnesota first, America first,
Right.
Rochester first, you know? And you couldn't take 1,000 people from Minnesota and just pack them into Belize and expect the government of Belize to give them jobs and find them a place to live and build apartments for them.
But why
And,
do we do it and forget our own? I will never, because and just in California they passed. I can't even buy a house, right? I know people that look like me, that are different tone of color, right? That
yeah,
can't buy a house. But yet you can come over, you can cross that border down there, and they'll help you buy a house because California just passed it $130. I mean, 130,000 for undocumented illegals. So it makes me really wonder, like, what the hell is going on, man? Like, why can't we take care of our people first? Because they're the ones that did all the blood. They're the ones that did all the sweat. They're the ones that did all the tears of why I can even go eat a $2 hamburger at McDonald's, or the reason of why I have certain things, of freedoms, of privileges in America, and yet we don't care about our own. We care more about other people. I never understand that, because I really love all of my veterans. I really do.
uh-huh.
But another
But
thing of it is, I congratulate some of them, and they stop me because they tell me I didn't go. I went over there to protect my country. That's not what happened. And then you have that real story. So not everybody has the same story of why they went over to Iraq, or why they were over in Afghanistan, or why they were in Kuwait. Everybody's got a different, analogy, rhetoric of why they were over there. And to be honest, I really do feel like that's why we have so many homeless Americans that are veterans, because they're fucked up and we don't care about them. Because something happened over there when they were overseas. They weren't fighting for our country. There was something way more serious that was going on. That's why we have so many post-traumatic stress disorders, and we're not dealing with them.
yeah,
That's the one thing that hurts, because we do so much for illegals than we do for Americans, and we got to pay for it because they don't pay taxes, but yet we do. We know we have the property taxes, we got all different types of taxes, but yet they live comfortably. Because when I go apply for welfare, I see Escalades, I see Teslas, but they're not ours. They're not Americans.
oh no, the refugees are driving
Right.
Audis. That the refugees are driving Volvos. What? I mean, how do you have this like SUV? How do you drive this massive new truck? My car is old. My
Right.
car's beat up. I was looking for that new House file, I could not find it here, but there is, you mentioned the California loan program.
Yeah.
It's in the news right now in Minnesota. They have a similar loan program in Minnesota that they're rolling out where there's going to be mortgages and loan offerings. They're going to give
I don't know,
a
25,000.
how much is it? It's 150,000, $100,000 loans
I thought
for.
in California it's 130, but in Minnesota I thought it was 25,000 for the home loans.
Oh, well, we can look that
I'll
up.
look that up.
Everybody's got the Google machine, so
Right.
they.
I know there's different kind of, there's different things going on right now. There's the Office of New Americans, which people need to be concerned about. The Office OAN.
Yeah. Tell us about the Office of New Americans, because that's fascinating. How about an Office of Old Americans that are
right.
already here?
We don't got no office. There's a lot of legislation. They're making it easier for people that come across here, let's say illegally, they've done, let's say, wrong in their country and they're running from something. They have protections in place to protect them from taking them back to their country. That's not right. I think there should be accountability. There shouldn't be anywhere called a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, because when we go over there, we're not safe. We're not protected people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We have to go over there with our own, head on a swivel. So why should it be that we have offices? Because there's plenty here in Minnesota. We're not a sanctuary state, but we do have legislation in play, like the Minnesota North Star Act, which makes Minnesota a sanctuary state. And that's something that we need to be concerned about, because we're already doing college for all, right? Where they can go to any university in Minnesota. It doesn't matter if you're undocumented. You can make up to $250,000 a year. How does that help us Americans?
Wow.
Poor Minnesotans, if everybody is even driver's license for all. I think about the Uber, Lyft. That wasn't for us. That was so taxi. We haven't drove taxis in years. Let's be honest, people. We haven't drove a taxi in years. They were all foreigners, because all we do, you get on social media, anybody that rides a taxi or cab, and what do you see them complain about? Oh, I don't like the smell. I don't like this. I don't like that. So why, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, if we don't want the low paying jobs, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
let's stop being lazy and go to work, because that's who's replacing us. We're having more robots go to work because we Americans don't want to. We feel like COVID showed us that we're worth $900 a week to do nothing. Yeah. Let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? That's why I feel like why our society, why our generation is so lazy and doesn't care about others, is because the government always comes out with their titty and nipple. I feel like that
motivated us. Yes.
Right. You know what I'm saying? That's what I feel like. They're always there for that protection, but really are they not? Because law enforcement is supposed to protect and serve, but that's not what we see. We see they duck and swerve. Because I'll bring up Uvalde.
They tamped us down.
Right.
They broke our motivation. Everybody gets an A. Everybody gets a B. Why study if everybody in the class is going to pass?
Right.
The grades are going to be averaged out. So you get universal basic income, you're going to be fine. Hang out at home. Doesn't make any sense to do anything other than sit home and play video games.
Right.
I've heard old people complain about young people sitting in the basement playing video games, but that's conditioning.
Right.
I mean, to an extent, but they put that on us. When there's some other things, like we've mentioned nonprofits before.
Yeah.
How come nonprofits don't have public accountability? How come you can have a nonprofit where you can have LLCs, people hiding behind other groups?
Oh.
So the money flows into a nonprofit, and then you don't get to see who's really. It's Mr. Gates behind the curtain. It's Mark Zuckerberg behind the curtain, and then they write a contract with Olmsted County, or then they got a contract all of a sudden to provide this or that service. But how does a nonprofit? Isn't that supposed to be about a spirit of volunteerism? We have a nonprofit with $80 million at their disposal. $80 million at their disposal. Replacing real banks is now a food bank. I mean, welcome to the Hunger Games.
That
You don't have any money in the bank, but you know what? You've got some food at the food bank. So you can go down and take out your money. You're paying for it anyway
right.
because because that's a tax exempt organization and they're not taxed and their economic activity isn't being taxed. The
But go to
companies that
Walmart
donate
and the
food
food
to
they
them
throw
get
out
the
and
tax.
take it. You're going to
The
jail.
corporation drops off food, they get the tax break.
Right.
And then the people that throw away the rotten food, the garbage company that comes and takes away the rotten food and disposes of the old beef and meat that doesn't get taken, or the old vegetables, that company gets a tax break. So the whole thing from start to finish is a tax exempt activity that's competing with an economic model of having a grocery store. So why have a grocery store? The
Right.
government's doing it. The government's doing it. That's how Venezuelans ended up eating flamingos at the zoo.
Talk about it, because that's the one thing we may see most things as pets. I bring that up about cats and dogs all the time, especially from growing up in North Minneapolis, Minneapolis, period, is that I don't know if I ate cat or dog. I probably did, but that's okay because in other countries, they see that as a delicacy. So why should
Yeah.
I? I love cats. I love dogs. You know what I'm saying? But if we can eat deer, if we Americans can eat deer, why can't they eat
Yeah.
cats and dogs? Because we see that as pets. We see Bambi.
Yeah.
We see Peter Pan, or not, what's the rabbit, Peter Rabbit, whatever his name was, as
Peter Rabbit.
you know,
Rare rabbit.
right?
Rare rabbit.
So it's like, why can't we have an understanding? This is what I tell my mom, right? She can't stand. She loves everybody, but she doesn't like the whole trans and gay. She's on one of them older generation, right? And I understand it because my grandpa was the same way. There wasn't very many black people around him when he grew up. So of course he didn't know, he didn't understand that, and I get that. A lot of people don't. I go to this area. Why am I everywhere the only black person?
Yeah.
Because there's none around. There's nobody that looks like. Everybody thinks there's a black guy that walks around in Grand Meadow that people think he's my brother because he looks like me. I don't know that guy. I'm sorry, but I don't know him. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make him that we're family or that we know each other because we're the same color. You know what I'm saying? Because that's all people see. So I want people to realize that there's a lot at play in Minnesota. We have Walz as vice president, or could potentially be the vice president, which leaves Flanagan, Bobby Joe Champion in that district Senate seat open in 59, right? So there's a lot at play, and I'm glad that you're talking about nonprofits. Is because, is there going to be accountability? Are we going to demand accountability in 60 days in November? Are we going to keep on going with the same old and sweeping things under the rug and not facing our fears?
So if I could talk.
Go ahead. You
wow.
finish?
You really get me thinking. See, these brainstorming sessions are good, and more people need to be doing this because you got me thinking about Andy Smith and the DFL all did this together. They voted against directing the Attorney General's office to investigate fraud, waste, abuse in our government. And that's a big thing in Minnesota. All of a sudden, we have got fraud, waste, and abuse happening in our departments like never before, on a level like never before. And they voted again, and Andy voted against this too. He voted against requiring a financial oversight report conducted by a third-party outside agency, which would have meant that the Department of Human Services would have been finally investigated. I mean, I found some videos of me like 6-7 years ago at Attorney General Keith Ellison's office, aka Muhammad Hakim.
Right.
And also we were outside the Department of Human Services protesting, and then we had a meeting with Carolyn Ham, who was the directrix at that time. It's like 6-7 years ago we've been calling for oversight of these agencies and like investigate the fraud, waste, and abuse, because you had all that like $250 million a year going over to Somalia in suitcases out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And nobody could do anything about it because it was the Halawa money transfer system. So your tax money is going to fund terrorism in the Levant and ISIL, not ISIS so much, but the money was going through Dubai or the airports there. But they tracked it all, but nothing could be done about it.
Right.
They voted against that oversight board. We need to have all these nonprofits audited at the same time as we audit our government, because the NGOs are functioning as part of the government right now. The NGOs are rolling out the initiatives.
Now, I will say this. I'm going to cut you off for
outside.
just a minute, because
Okay.
that nonprofits and the scams is that's my jam. Now, I was told from the feds there is 540 open investigations in the nonprofits about misuse of funds. I don't now. There's some there's been some that we've seen not defeating our future. We've seen different scams being called out.
Yeah.
But what they're trying, I think, what I feel like, because I know sheriffs that are involved. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That, so yes, but like I'll put it out there. Bob Fletcher, Ramsey County. Everybody knows that he was a part of Feeding Our Future scam, or they should know if you're paying attention. Is that the feds are talking to people, and they've been having conversations, because not everybody is silent. It's that people that are talking are being paid attention to.
I'm really happy. Sometimes I keep it up, keep talking to the feds, because I'm starting to think, I mean, as regardless what we think about the FBI in some ways as being part of a problem, there's maybe elements of the FBI that can't be, they're not white hats, so to speak. They're not good guys. But it seems like in some cases in Rochester, the only time there's been any action on stuff is when a higher outside agency gets involved. It has to go beyond RPD and Chief Jim Franklin. It has to go beyond Kevin Torgerson. It has to reach the state level or the Fed level or even the Department of Homeland Security before some level of law enforcement starts to get interested. When you've got an executive of a non-profit, I like putting that in air quotes, and that dude is making $175,000 a year, and he's got a $25,000 benefits package, there's some there, when there's just so much money going around Rochester that is unchecked. And those NGOs are acting like they're government agencies now. And they hang out with all the same people. So there's a collusion going on there. There's a breakfast club that meets in Rochester that's way more powerful than any group of people sitting at the city council meeting up on the Dias. And the county commissioners, I'll throw them in too. There's a breakfast club where the real work of who's going to run next, who's going to play musical chairs with the political positions, and that goes to the Minnesota State Senate or the Minnesota State House. It's like, oh, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Well, what are you going to run for next? And former people turn up there, former representatives.
I know an ex-wife, her husband, and their child. So you're talking about our attorney general, our 5th Ward council member, and then our Minneapolis Public Schools are all in the same family. Ellison. Look up Kim Ellison, Jeremiah Ellison, and then Keith. They're all related. That's mother, daughter, and son. And it's crazy to me how nobody calls that out as being ethical or unethical, for the simple fact that you're having people that know each other, that are family members, in meetings and deciding our fate, and we have no say in it, but yet those 3 get to decide in what we get to do. Why is that?
And they're not from here. Throw that in there too.
That definitely ain't from. Most people aren't from here. Besides, and I'll take that back about Palmer. I didn't know he went to Lourdes. Most aren't from here. Vital is from Chicago. Burke's Chicago. I think. Most of the black people are leaders. Crockett, Baltimore.
Ellison, Michigan.
They're really not from here. Most of our leaders are not from here, and I want people to remember that.
Mustafa came from Pennsylvania.
Right. There's a connection.
White girl from Croydon, and tells me, she was a Catholic girl, and then
they migrated here.
Plays the Yeah. Anyway, bless her now. She is involved with helping people get off drugs and alcohol, and she's working in good.
So,
She's doing God's work now, and I wish her well in that work, and actually want to bury the hatchet with her a little bit. But the shenanigans that were going on needed to be called out when they were going on. It's now everything's fine.
right.
But that whole the way that each community in Minnesota has one of these white girls that's converted to Islam is way too much a coincidence for
No,
it not to be a strategy. And that's Jelani Hussein with the Council on American Islamic Relations.
right.
Find a you know a white girl who's easy on the eyes, who's converted to Islam, and then you drop her into a community and she becomes the local activist for, Islam. But it's the mosque itself and the Post Bulletin. She left the editorial board, and she is no longer on the board of directors of the
Right.
mosque in Rochester. And I meant to look up I wanted to dig deeper into the legal battle over ownership at the mosque that happened. I want to get more details on that, just so I can know why it was that fight happened.
I will say this to you, Wes, and I don't think I've ever said this to you yet since we met, is that the election is coming up in 60 days. If you want to do this once or twice a week, I'm all for it, about exposing the systems that are at play, because I understand you don't believe that you have a chance in winning in November. And that's fine, because I will tell you like this, is that there's a lot of candidates in Minnesota that have no chance in winning, right? But they have a chance at exposing there's systems that are at play. So let's expose the shit out of Andy
Yeah.
Smith and Democrats in Rochester, Minnesota, and show people what's
Yeah.
really going on. Because I see,
Right.
Jensen,
Absolutely.
Burke, every people that I ran with in 2022 are being silent as hell, and I don't understand why. Because they know so much, what's going on, but yet everybody's being silent, and I wonder why. But I really want to get to the bottom of our systems that are at play and make change, because I'm tired of living like this. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to go outside of my house or go to Rochester and be seen not as, oh, there goes Chaz. No, I just want to be seen as, hey, I'm a black guy, and I'm a human being, and I'm shopping with my family. That's all. Or I'm walking the street. I don't want to be known as, hey,
Yeah.
there's that conspiracy theorist Chaz. No, I'm not that. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I will be calling my PO tomorrow. I'm gonna call her after what I had in 2020 happened during the election year for Trump. Yeah, and Biden, I'm definitely calling my PO, because there was definitely way too many calls. I was in a lot of trouble that year, so
Yeah.
I'm definitely making a call tomorrow
You're,
to my PO.
you making me want to you're making me show my T-shirt so I can
Honor,
challenge my McGregor energy here, bringing out the fighting Irish in me, and so I'm a little bit Scottish, a little bit Irish, I'm a little
right?
bit Norwegian, a little bit Swedish, I'm a little bit Native American
Are
Indian,
you white?
and French. Yeah,
You
am I
white?
white? I don't
You
know.
white?
Irish.
I didn't hear white
I,
in that. I heard Scottish. I heard everything, ethnic group, but I didn't hear white.
yeah, yeah. I'm not.
No.
You're right. Right. So, like, am I white? Because I'm like, well, yes.
Right.
I'm also way cooler than I'm just like I I am I am so many different things. I
Same.
used to
Right.
call myself an American mutt. I'm a typical American mutt.
I think we all
I'm that
are.
mutt stew, right?
I think we all
And that's
are.
what we used to aspire to be. We're all Americans and we love this country.
Yep.
And then so you got me thinking on a lot of levels. So I'm trying to do my appeal to heaven and say we got to fight for the people that live here. That's what the T-shirt's all about today, you know. And to vilify people who love the place they're from. Why is it that white people are supposed to feel? I mean, why why the permanent racial guilt? You
I don't
know,
know.
on a segment of the society, there's a lot of anti-whiteism going on, and the mainstream politicians are even starting to notice it a little bit. It's becoming more palatable to shift that Overton window to the point where we can talk about, like, Why participate in this economy if you hate it so much?
Right.
Why fly here from 12 time zones away to get off the plane and tell us we're bad people and we're supposed to do things your way, the way you did it back in Mama Africa? It's just not. It's not feasible.
Right.
If
It's not.
you don't complain about, are you complaining about electricity and the cell phones and the public sewers, and everything tends to work. Things are humming along in this economy, and you got to call the people who helped build this place
Right.
some name. It's weird, but let's do this more frequently
Definitely.
because it inspires me a little bit that we are breaking a narrative when people don't want us talking and people reach out and try to keep us from talking to each other. I've had a lot of that over the years, and like you said, I didn't think I have a chance of. They tell me not to tell people that negative. They call that negative. I
That's
say it's being
reality.
realistic.
That's
It's
realistic.
reality.
Right.
I'm the underdog, and I'm the unpalatable one. I'm the meanie. I'm the meanie head. Blah blah blah. You know,
Oh, you still there? Oh, you still ended the stream? No, but still there. My bad. Oh my lord. It's totally. I know it is.